What is going on, everybody? We've got some more NFL draft content here with the draft just a few days away. Earlier today, I uploaded a video with the top 10 players at each offensive position, and here we're going to do the top 10 players at each defensive position. If you watch that video, it's pretty much the same thing, but for defensive players. So I kind of had to make a disclaimer at the beginning of a previous video that these are my personal rankings and evaluations for all these players, not where I think they will end up, but more so where I would personally rank them. Obviously, it's for draft. Everybody has different opinions, so rather than attacking me down below in the comments just because we disagree, instead we can have a healthy discussion about it. And I think that's part of what makes the draft fun, having a difference of opinions, because if everybody had the same thoughts and opinions on prospects, then it would be boring. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road, and let's start with edge rushers. So I've been very back and forth on who I wanted to rank as my number one edge rusher between Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan and Kayvon Thibodeaux out of Oregon. I think they're both spectacular players, but I ended up giving Hutchinson the slight nod, putting Hutchinson as my fourth overall player in this year's draft class, and Kayvon Thibodeaux right behind him at 5. Hutchinson does not have the ceiling that Kayvon Thibodeaux does, and I think ceiling is important when ranking pass rushers, because having a game-wrecking pass rusher can be a game changer for your football team. But I think even with his high floor, Aiden Hutchinson has a chance to be a really, really good pass rusher at the next level. He's not quite the prospect that guys like Myles Garrett and Chase Young were, but he's pretty darn close, and it seems like he'll be the number one pick. Even though I have him 4th on my overall big board, I don't have a problem with Jacksonville picking him at number 1. Kayvon Thibodeaux comes in as my 5th overall player. I think the ceiling for him is higher than on Aiden Hutchinson, and I feel like Kayvon Thibodeaux has been unbelievably disrespected by the media the past couple of months throughout draft season, with all these reports coming out that he doesn't play with a high motor, which I feel like is not true, and that he doesn't love the game of football, which I can't speak on whether that's true or not, but it seems like all of the rumors of him not loving the game of football is kind of BS, and he has other interests outside of football, which is fine. There's no issue with that. You don't have to be a meathead football guy to be a good player in the NFL. So I think that argument against him is really, really stupid. And I feel for a guy a little bit, but he's going to be a great player in the NFL. He's got a chance to be a star. I think his upside is parallel with Travon Walker, but his floor is quite a bit higher. And that brings us here to Travon Walker. He's my 3rd-ranked edge rusher, the 18th overall player for me in the class. So Travon Walker is an interesting one because he's going to go earlier than 18th. He has some traits that really have never been seen before by a pass rusher, but the production at Georgia hasn't really been there. You can make the argument that he was the 4th or 5th best player in that front 7, which more so is just about how good Georgia's front 7 was, with possibly multiple other first-round guys. But Travon Walker has the ceiling to be spectacular, so I don't feel like I can keep him out of first-round consideration. But I just don't see him as a top 10 prospect as a lot of other people and likely most scouts around the league do. From there, we have Jermaine Johnson. He's my 23rd overall ranked prospect and my 4th edge rusher. I'm a little bit lower on Johnson. I just don't see game-changing elite upside with him. I think he's going to be a good pro. He was fantastic last year at Florida State, but he was a little bit of a one-year wonder. Sort of hit the scene in 2021, and I think he'll be good, but I'm just not overly confident in it as of now. George Karlaftis is my edge 5, 25th overall player. Again, the ceiling isn't sky high with Karlaftis. His measurables and length are not there, or at least what you would hope for in a first-round guy, but he plays with a high motor, and he's been consistently productive for the Purdue Boilermakers, so I do think he's probably a fringe first-round guy for me as of now. David Ojabo is my edge 6, 30th overall player in the class. If not for the Achilles injury at his pro day, he'd probably be a little bit higher. I don't know if he'd be higher than Johnson or Karlaftis, but he would certainly be close. Ojabo has plenty of upside. He had a great season last year at Michigan. You can make the argument that that was partly because he had Aiden Hutchinson on the other side of him, and while that may be true, I think it's hard to deny the ceiling that Ojabo has. So he's going to be my edge 6. Obviously, the Achilles injury is sort of a big deal. He's probably going to miss most, if not all, of his rookie season. But with modern medicine and technology, I think he should be able to come back stronger and better than ever. My number 7 edge rusher is Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State. He's my 35th overall player in the class. Ebiketie started his college career at Temple, was great there, went to Penn State, was great last year. He's one of the older prospects in this draft class, but I think he's going to be a good pro right off the bat. Doesn't have the ceiling to be great, but I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's probably going to go in the back end of the first round to a playoff team, and he's going to make an early impact as a rookie. Josh Paschal is my 48th ranked player in the class. He's my 8th ranked edge rusher. It's not really clear whether Paschal's going to be more of an edge rusher in the NFL or if he's going to play on the interior. He's a great run defender, needs to improve as a pass rusher. Doesn't have the traits to be a phenomenal pass rusher, but I think he's going to be a productive guy early in his NFL career. So for that, I have him as my number 8 edge rusher. For 9 and 10, I've got Drake Jackson from USC and Sam Williams out of Ole Miss. Both players are a little bit more raw, but both of them have the upside to be very, very good. So I think if you can find a tradesy pass rusher on day 2 like Jackson or Williams, certainly could be valuable there. This is a deep edge rushing class. There are a number of other edge rushers I have in my top 100, including Boye Mafe. He's my 60th overall prospect, so right after Williams and Drake Jackson. I know most people are higher on Boye Mafe. It seems like he has a good shot of going into the first round. I'm just not as high on him. He is an older player at 24 years old. He's a little bit more raw. He does have the athletic upside to be good, but it's kind of like Bernard Raymond, who we talked about in the last episode. They're raw, they're athletic, and they have a lot of upside, but they're both older prospects. Raymond's a little bit older than Mafe, but the point remains. So that's why I don't have Boye Mafe in my top 10. The only other edge rusher I have in my top 100 is Myjai Sanders out of Cincinnati. He's my 87th overall player, but there are a number of guys right outside of the top 100, like Alex Wright, Kingsley Enagbare, Christopher Allen, amongst others. The interior defensive line class isn't quite as good as the edge rushing group, but still a very talented group of players. I list them as interior defensive linemen rather than defensive tackles, because I feel like interior defensive line is a more broad term, and all these guys provide different roles on the defensive line. So I know that sounds like weird, but just go with it. So Jordan Davis is my number 1 interior defensive lineman, the 16th overall player for me in the draft. So Jordan Davis is interesting because he's a mammoth of a human being. He tore up the combine. He was a total monster throughout the season. But I do have some question marks about him, how much he's going to be able to impact passing downs. He was great as a run defender for Georgia, and even if you're only getting him as a run defender, he's still going to be a total stud. But how much will he provide in the pass game, and how many downs is he going to be able to play? Because he did sit out for a lot of snaps. He's a big guy, it's easier for him to get winded. So I'm not sure how he'll be able to manage his conditioning in the NFL. But when he's on the field, he's going to make a big impact. So that's how he gets a round 1 grade for me. Next up, I have Travis Jones from UConn. He's a fringe first-rounder, 38th overall player in the class. Travis Jones, his name really rose up once we got to the Senior Bowl, where he tore it up. Great combine as well. He was really the lone bright spot on a pretty poor UConn team. And with a lot of these defensive linemen, I will say they had a number of good players around them. You can't really say that for Travis Jones, which makes his past season even more impressive. Devontae Wyatt is next, my 39th overall player in the class, so 1 spot below Travis Jones. So Devontae Wyatt is definitely better than the 39th best football player in the draft class, but I do have some questions about him. There was a report that came out recently about a past domestic violence charge. That's not ideal. And he is an older prospect. He's already 24 years old. I do think that he's going to be he has a better chance, at least, of being a better pro than some of the other older prospects like Bernard Raymond and Boye Mafe, because I think Wyatt is a lot better than those guys right away, and I think Wyatt also does have a very high ceiling. I don't know how much he'll be able to tap into that with being an older prospect, but his age, along with his off-the-field question marks and his character concerns, that's what bumps him down to 39, but still an outstanding football player. I don't think he'd be ahead of Jordan Davis if it weren't for the domestic violence charge and say he was 22, but he'd be a lot closer. Logan Hall is next. He is a day 2 grade for me, 55th overall player in the class. I wouldn't be surprised if Logan Hall ends up in the first round, kind of like how his teammate at Houston, Peyton Turner, sort of hopped into the first round out of nowhere, but I think Logan Hall is a better prospect than Peyton Turner was a year ago. Hall has plenty of versatility. You could put him on the edge. You could put him on the interior defensive line. Really, really good player. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. And I think when he gets drafted earlier than expected, people are going to be like, what? Who the hell is this? But if you're listening to this, just be prepared. He's going to go earlier than you think. Our next three guys are right next to each other. We have Ioma Uwazurike, Phidarian Mathis, and Perion Winfrey, all right next to each other on my board. So Uwazurike is certainly a sleeper of mine. Not a lot of people know about him, and I think most people are going to have Mathis and Winfrey definitely ranked ahead of him. But I like what Uwazurike brings to the table. He's my 93rd overall player. I think he has quite a bit of upside as a pass rusher going forward. And I think he's certainly going to be a sleeper towards the end of this draft, who I think has a real shot of developing into a good player. Phidarian Mathis is another older player. He's 24 years old, but he doesn't have the high ceiling that some of the other older players do, but he does have a high floor. I think he's going to make an instant impact as a run defender day one. I don't think he's ever going to be a great player, but I think he's going to be a valuable piece in the middle of the defensive line as soon as he's a rookie. And then we get to Perion Winfrey, the Senior Bowl MVP. He was really great throughout the entire Senior Bowl week, which certainly boosted his stock. I'm a little bit lower on Winfrey. I have more questions about his game than other people do. I think most people probably see him as like a late second-round guy. I see him more as a late third-round guy. Still a good player, but I'm not as high on him as others are. DeMarvin Leal is my 121st ranked overall player. Leal entered the season as a projected top 5 to 10 pick, and it just didn't really work out this year. He didn't test all that great at the combine. He's a little bit of a tweener. He's 6'4", about 280 pounds, so he doesn't really have the weight to necessarily, make a high impact on the interior defensive lineman, but I also don't really think he has the quickness to be a great edge rusher. So he is sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think he has the talent to possibly be pretty good, but we've got to figure out if he can bulk up about 20, 30 pounds and get stronger, or if he tries to turn into an edge rusher, which hopefully he gets a little bit quicker and can be more of a prototypical edge pass rusher. My interior defensive lineman at number 9 is going to be Otio Ogbonia out of UCLA. He's my 144th ranked overall player in the draft class. I think a lot of other people are going to have some different players round out the top 10 in their interior defensive line list. Guys like Neil Farrell, Matthew Butler. They're not too far behind, but I do like Ogbonia. I think he's a pretty talented player. Probably someone who is going to be more of a nose tackle, a big guy. But I think regardless, he's going to be a solid depth piece. I don't know if he ever has the upside to develop into a great starter. And then we get to Haskell Garrett out of Ohio State. He just missed the cut for my final 150. He would have been probably somewhere in the 150s if I were to continue the rankings further. Very high production from Garrett. He's been quite good the past couple of seasons. I don't think he has, again, the upside to really make him a great player, but I think he's going to be solid depth for whoever picks him up. This is certainly a talented linebacking group. Certainly one of the deeper linebacker classes in recent memory. As we start with Devin Lloyd, my 9th overall prospect. I'm very high on Lloyd. I don't think he has the ceiling to be a total game wrecker, but I think he's going to be a very good player right away as a rookie. Has good size, good length, really does everything well. And I think he's going to be highly productive for a long time for whoever picks him. And he should go in the top half of the first round, in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure if that's where he's going to end up. He just misses the cut for me as a borderline elite prospect, but still gets a well-deserved first-round grade. Nakobe Dean is next. He's my 29th overall prospect. I think I'm a little bit lower on him than consensus, but I still think he is a very talented prospect in his own right. He's a little bit undersized, but he has good instincts to the ball, physical player. Certainly had some help by playing with multiple other NFL caliber linebackers like Quay Walker and Channing Tindall. But I think Nakobe Dean's probably a fringe first-round guy. If he goes in the first round, I don't have a problem with it. But I also wouldn't necessarily call him a steal if he goes in the back end of round 1. Leo Chanel is my linebacker 3. Awesome athlete, awesome in coverage. He's going to be a very fun player in the NFL. I think I'm certainly higher on him than most, but I think he's got the shot to be very, very solid. Quay Walker's my 4th linebacker. He's big. He's a old school, very good in the run. He does need to improve his fluidity, needs to get a little bit better in the pass game, but I think he's going to be a very hard-nosed, tough linebacker early on in his NFL career. Chad Muma out of Wyoming is my linebacker 5. Very well-rounded guy. I think he has a high floor. We saw Logan Wilson come out of Wyoming a couple years ago. He's been a highly productive linebacker. Muma's probably going to get drafted in that same range. And again, as I like to say, don't scout the helmet, scout the player. But I do think we could see some parallels between Muma's career trajectory in the NFL along with Logan Wilson's. Damone Clark is my linebacker 6. If not for the recent Lisfranc surgery, he'd probably end up a little bit higher for me. He's probably going to miss his full rookie season. He should be able to get a full recovery, but we don't really know that. So hopefully he'll be all good, but probably not someone who's going to be able to make an impact as a rookie because he's not going to play. Christian Harris, linebacker 7, my 82nd overall ranked player in the class. As you see, linebackers 7 through 10 are all very close. Harris is super athletic. He's a little bit undersized, and I think he's got a lot of work to do. He's raw, but the NFL loves talented athletes at the linebacker position. And really these next 3 guys, Harris, Trey Anderson from Montana State, and Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, they're all sort of in the same boat. They're all a little bit raw to me, but they all have good athleticism. They all have good upside. Anderson in particular is quite interesting because he is a total freak coming from FCS Montana State. Tore it up at the Combine. That's sort of when everybody got to know who he was. Very versatile player. He's played a ton of positions on both sides of the ball. So it's really pick your poison with Harris, Anderson, or Asamoah. I could really have them going in any order. This is just how I ordered them. And then Malcolm Rodriguez is my linebacker 10, my 90th overall player in the draft class. He's a little bit undersized, but he's a tough linebacker, plays with a lot of intensity and effort, very high motor. I think he's a top 100 player. He doesn't have top 100 measurables, but I think he's a good football player, and even if he doesn't have an elite NFL length or athleticism, being a good football player goes a long way in this league. So that's my top 10 linebackers, very talented group. There are some interesting athletes outside of the top 10. Channing Tindall from Georgia is my 103rd ranked player in the class, linebacker 11. Brandon Smith from Penn State, he's my linebacker 12, 147th overall in the class. So those are a couple other guys to watch out for. Just a ton of totally freakish athletic players here at the linebacker position. So I'm really excited to see how some of these guys develop. And I think 1 or 2 of these guys late down the board could become stars in the NFL. There's no shortage of talent here at cornerback. I don't think the cornerback position is quite as deep this year as it has been in recent years, but it's certainly top heavy with a number of first-round caliber players, including Ahmad Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. He's my 3rd ranked player in the draft class. He's my number 1 ranked defensive player in the entire class. I think he really is just the total package. He checks all the boxes, good size, good length, good athleticism, very solid in man and zone coverage, good ball skills as well. He really just gives you everything you want. I think he's a safe player in the sense that there aren't really any question marks about his game. But if you combine all of those skills together, the length, the ball skills, etc., I think he has a high ceiling as well and is absolutely worth a top 5 pick in my opinion. Derek Stingley, cornerback number 2, my 7th overall ranked player in the draft class. Stingley is obviously an interesting case because as a true freshman in 2019, he was unbelievable. One of the best defensive players in the country as a true freshman on that loaded LSU roster, but it hasn't really been the same for Stingley the past couple of years. He hasn't quite lived up to his freshman season when he's been on the field, and that's when he's on the field because he's missed quite a bit of time. But I'm willing to gamble on the prospect here with Stingley just because his 2019 film was just so good. And I think he is going to be worth a top 10 pick at the end of the day. I'm not sure if he will go in the top 10, but I would be willing to take a gamble if I was a team towards the back end of the top 10, like the Giants, the Falcons, the Seahawks, somebody like that. Trent McDuffie is my CB3, my 11th overall player in the class. He doesn't have the size and length that you would hope for compared to a guy like Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley, but McDuffie is a very smart player, highly productive. He has the versatility to play corner and safety as well, and I think he's going to be a really good pro. I don't know if he has the upside to be elite, but I think he's a fantastic prospect. He's being a little bit overlooked in my opinion because of Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley. I know everybody views McDuffie as a top 15 to 20 pick, but I think he's a little bit better than that. I think he is just a tad bit underrated by the draft community. So it seems like everybody has those 3 as their top 3 corners. And then we get to these next 2, Kyer Elam and Andrew Booth. I think a lot of people are having trouble on how to order them, which one is the better prospect. For me, it's Kaiir Elam because I think he is a little bit more sound in coverage. I think he has better length and athleticism. And I value somebody who has the upside of just being like an elite shutdown corner, which I think Kaiir Elam can do, rather than Andrew Booth, who I don't think quite has that potential, but Booth is more of a playmaker, better ball skills. That's certainly an important trait to have, and Booth might be the best playmaking corner in this year's draft class. He has great ball skills. He is coming off surgery. He did miss the combine, or he missed the combine drills, per se. So there is some questions about that. And I think even though Andrew Booth probably has the higher floor, I really like Kaiir Elam's upside. So Elam is my 20th overall prospect. Booth is my 27th. We're going to skip over Tariq Woolen real quick. You'll see why in a second. We're going to talk about my 7th ranked corner, Kyler Gordon, my 44th overall player. I could see Gordon sliding into the first round, but I view him as a high day 2 pick. I'm not really sure if he's going to be a boundary corner at the next level or in the slot. He did play a lot of slot at Washington, so I'm curious to see where he plays his majority of his snaps in the NFL, but I think he's a good player. I don't think he has a sky-high ceiling, but I think he's going to be quite solid. So when you're drafting corners in the mid to late rounds, I think you're best off going for guys with high traits who have a lot of upside because they have a real shot of hitting. And it's hard to find corners like in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round who don't have those elite traits who end up becoming good. So my next 3 guys are a perfect example of that. Tariq Woolen from UTSA, Jalen Armour-Davis from Alabama, and Zion McCollum from Sam Houston State. So Woolen is a little bit higher than the latter 2. I have Woolen as my 42nd overall player. That's going to be higher than anybody ranks him. But Tariq Woolen's a very interesting player. 6'4", and a 4.26 40-yard dash. Both of those numbers are certainly going to pop off the page. But I think Tariq Woolen's a better player than people really give him credit for. Woolen is new to the position, and I think he's had a good development track over his first couple of seasons at corner for UTSA. So I think if he continues to develop, he's going to be a stud in the NFL. And I really, really like what he brings to the table, and I'm pretty confident he ends up as a 2nd-round pick. Jalen Armour-Davis and Zion McCollum come as my 65th and 66th players overall. Armour-Davis coming from Alabama, 1-year starter, was quite productive last year. Again, another guy who I think is better than people are really giving him credit for right now, to be honest. He is still a little bit raw. He has some work to do, but I think he has a good shot of being a good pro. And then the same can be said here for Zion McCollum, another big, long, lengthy, athletic corner. He's coming from a small school of Sam Houston State, but I really like the upside he brings to the table. So Woolen, Armour-Davis, and McCollum, in my opinion, all of the ceiling to be fantastic players. Martin Emerson is my CB10 coming out of Mississippi State. Emerson's an interesting player. I like him quite a bit. And I had a hard time really with these last couple of cornerback rankings because I like Emerson, but there are a number of guys right below him who I like as well. Roger McCreary, my CB11. He's my 68th overall player in the class, so 1 spot below Martin Emerson. There's another other guys I like here for cornerback position as well. Caleb Evans from Missouri. He's my 97th ranked prospect, CB12. Isaac Taylor Stewart, cornerback 13. Cam Taylor Britt, cornerback 14. Jacoby Durant, cornerback 15. Tariq Castro Fields, CB 16. All of those guys are in my top 106 prospects. So it's a pretty deep group of players who are going to be solid day 2 guys and have the chance to be very, very solid. We're going to wrap up the video here at the safety position, and this has been probably my favorite position group to evaluate this year because there's so many fun and unique skill sets. And we start with Kyle Hamilton. He's my number 1 ranked safety, the 13th overall player on my board. I'm not as high on Hamilton as a lot of people in the media. You have to keep in mind that my board does not account for positional value, so I don't have him at 13 because he's a safety, which isn't a position of high value. I just think he's the 13th best player in this draft class, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with that. A lot of people are going to have him as a top 10 guy. I just don't think Hamilton is this generational safety that people make him out to be. I still think he's fantastic, and he's going to be well worth a probably mid-first round pick, but I don't think he's a guy you really consider in the top 5. I just don't think he has that ability or upside. Right behind him is Dax Hill from Michigan. He's my 15th overall player. I really like Daxton Hill. I'm not sure if he's going to play safety right away or if he'll play in the slot. He's played a ton of slot corner in college, so I think he'd be able to excel there as well. And I think Dax Hill is going to be really, really good. I think he's probably going to be a back end of a first-round pick, but I think he's a top end of a first-round talent. From there, we have a number of fringe first-round safeties whom I really like. Jalen Petre's been one of my favorite players in this draft class for a while. I've been mocking him pretty high compared to other people as a late first, early second-round guy because that's where I see him. I think he will go that high, and I think he is that good. Petrie is a little bit of a tweener, however. Again, I'm not sure if he's going to play safety at the next level or slot corner, but I really like his versatility. He's a fun player. He's very active and enjoyable to watch, and I think he's going to be a really good pro in the NFL. Jaquan Brisker is my 28th overall player, number 4 safety. Freak athlete here. He's a little bit raw, but I think he's a little bit better than some people realize on day one, and the athleticism with him is off the charts. Another freak athlete who's raw but has upside is Nick Cross from Maryland. Cross is definitely one of my personal favorite players in this draft class. I think I'm higher on him than a lot of other people. I think most people see Cross as probably like a 3rd to 4th round pick, but I see him as a fringe day 1 guy. I really think he has that type of upside. He has shown plenty of flashes to have high ball skills, and I think if he develops, he's going to be really, really good. Right behind him is Lewis Cine out of Georgia. I'm a little bit lower on Cine than others. He just doesn't have the cover ability that these guys in the top 5 do, but I think he is more of a run guy early on. I think he'll be better in run support than some of these safeties in the top 5, but I just don't think he has the cover ability that some of them have, which is why he's my 6th ranked safety, but still my 34th overall player, which is quite solid. From there, we get to a cluster of day 2 safeties. We start with Kirby Joseph, my 69th overall player in the draft. Nice. I think Kirby Joseph has great ball skills. He displayed that this past season at the University of Illinois, and I think he's got the upside to be very solid. JT Woods from Baylor, freak athlete. Baylor has been churning out freak athletes this year. Jalen Petrie, of course, who we talked about just a moment ago, and then other players as well, like Kalen Barnes, the corner, Tyquan Thornton at wide receiver. JT Woods is a little bit raw, but I think the upside is sky high, and I think in the early part of the 3rd round, it would be worth it to take a shot on him. Tyson Anderson from Toledo is my 83rd overall player. I think I'm higher on him than the majority. I really like what he brings to the table. I think he has some very strong production with the Toledo Rockets. I also like his upside. I think he's got a chance to be a really, really solid pro, so he's going to get a mid-3rd round grade. And then Brian Cook from Cincinnati is my 10th ranked safety. I think I'm a little bit lower on Cook than others. I don't think he's as good as some of these other guys right above him like Joseph, Woods, or Anderson, but I think Brian Cook is still a solid pro. He just makes the cut as a day 2 grade for me. There are a number of other talented safeties not too far behind them as well. Verone McKinley from Oregon is my 104th ranked player in the class. I'm a Duck fan. I love Verone McKinley. I hope he exceeds that ranking. Smoke Monday from Auburn, my 115th ranked player. Percy Butler out of Louisiana is my 128th ranked player. So this is just such a talented safety group, and I'm excited to see how these guys all develop at the next level because I think this is a special group of players. So that's going to wrap up my defensive player rankings. In case you missed my offensive player rankings from earlier today, I recommend you check that one out. In a couple of days, I'm going to reveal my full top 150 big board. That's probably not going to be a very long video since I've already gone into detail about most of the players on the board throughout this video and the offensive player rankings. But nonetheless, I'm excited to show you guys my overall board. We've got some other mock drafts coming as well. Tomorrow, I'm going to upload my annual 7-round mock draft. Wednesday, I'm going to do a what I would do mock draft, so I'm stepping in the shoes of the GMs and making the picks that I would make. And then on Thursday, just a few hours before the draft, I'm going to do one more mock draft based on some of the final rumors and things I'm hearing around the league. And then, of course, Thursday is round 1, the big night. I'm considering on Friday and Saturday uploading like a day 1 of the draft thoughts video and then a day 2 of the draft thoughts video. I might even do it for day 3 as well as like an instant reaction once those rounds are over. So let me know what you think of that idea down below in the comments. Again, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.